Hey everybody, and welcome back to Upgrades Complete, and it is time for our tune-up video for the Ender3 V2. This is all your mods, all your upgrades, and all your problem solving put together. I'm going to cut this video up into sections, so if there's something you want to come back to or skip over, feel free. Give me a like and subscribe if you're interested, and stay tuned because here we go. So here it all is. These are your 3D printed upgrades for the Ender3 V2. Now, I am not affiliated with, but I have to give a big shout out to 3D Fuel. This is their PRO PLA engineering grade. It passed all my durability tests when I was making a rotary tool adapter out of it. So I decided to print all my upgrades out of it, and it does phenomenal work. Now, I have scoured the net, finding the best and testing out every add-on that you see before you, and from what I found, these seem to be the best of the best and the solve of the solves. And one of the main problems we have with the Ender3 V2 is the power supply unit. The cover is not ventilated, and I'll show you when we get to the printer. This is a honeycomb design, and if you follow my shorts, every piece you see before you is covered on its own short, along with every file that you'll need. Getting to what is probably the most important upgrade besides for the PSU covers is right over there. This is the micro SD to SD card adapter. Now, the reason this is so important is twofold. One, you don't want to keep removing your SD card from that micro slot. When you keep pushing that in and out, that's eventually going to go bad. Wouldn't you much rather have something that goes bad that you can just attach? You'll attach the cable through here once into your machine and you're done. Then you'll just remove and insert your SD card from the side here. It also has a nice slot on top if you want to add an additional one. Moving on to our feet, these are the 35mm risers. These work with the existing feet of your Ender3 V2. Again, you can find these in the shorts. It is a fantastic design. It's a direct replacement. You add the feet that exist on your Ender3 right into here, and you are going to get great additional amount of airflow out of it. Now, this is where one of the necessities comes in that you purchased was your micro SD card, the SD card adapter, and this will slot directly in. It holds nicely against the body. This sits behind this door, and you bend this around, it goes right into your machine. And once it's in and clicked in, you can forget about it. It's awesome. The next thing we're going to talk about is the filament guide holder. Now, this is what your filament guide itself is going to very snugly snap into. Now, this design is excellent because it adds a lot of material in here, and this is where your breaking point is going to be. I had one go on me before when I printed it out of just PLA. This PLA Pro Plus engineering grade from 3D Fuel really meets the mark when it comes to durability. Of course, you have a snip holder and you have an additional spade holder, which, you know, you can never have enough of them on hand. The right side of your machine, for the top, we have this beautifully designed Creality SD card slot holder. It holds your tools, it holds your spade, holds your SD cards. It is a fantastic design. Highly recommend you get it. Now, there are a lot of different filament guides out there. These are the best that I found. I love the roller design, and best of all, they snap onto the side of your machine, hold on securely. No screws need to be taken off, nothing needs to be adjusted. It's fantastic. This is going to be your lower filament guide, and this is going to be your upper. Now, as you can see on these rollers, the red here is a 608 bearing. I had a few laying around. These are 3D printable. You can print this bearing. You don't need to buy it, but for $5 you can get a half dozen of them, if not more. Might as well just go with the metal ones. They click into place. Check out my last short and you'll see how quickly and easily this assembles. Let's talk about print monitoring. There's a lot of options for these. This is the WiseCam V2 mount for the Ender3 V2. This is an excellently made mount. It actually holds the base of the camera in here really sturdy, really stable, and when you have it adjusted down, this doesn't move. So what's going to happen when your bed is sliding? This is going to move with your print, allowing for time-lapse photography. Now that's another thing that's great about these WiseCams, besides them being $20. They have an added bonus, a micro SD card slot. So you can record all the footage you want on it, and record every print you do, time-lapse it, throw it up on YouTube, TikTok, whatever you want to do. Awesome. Great design. Now, once again, all of these files are free, and they were made by 3D designers just like you. The last thing I have to talk about are these. These are just filler slots for the gaps, and it just keeps your machine nice and clean. They're great. I already installed 2 on my machine. I made these using an extremely thin file. I tried printing it out originally in PLA. It didn't hold up. They snapped as I tried to insert them in. With the 3D fuel, they went right through. It was a little snug to get in, but not anything unmanageable. And now they stay in, they don't crack, and they got a really nice shine on them because you print them on the bed with this side up. So you don't need any supports, and you can print a lot of them at the same time. If you go into the short, you can find a link to these, as well as every length for your Ender3 V2, and how many you'll need, and where they go, which is going above and beyond in my book. Now, I want to take a second and actually thank the 3D printing community, and especially those people that made and redesigned and reworked and remixed the parts for this Ender3 V2, and who did it in a greatly short amount of time since the V2's release, and really went above and beyond. I thank you, I salute you, and I hope everyone that sees this video will do the same. So, without further ado, let's get the Ender3 up here and start taking her apart and upgrading her. Now, before I get grief on the cable management, I am going to be printing a chain. Right now, getting this up off the ground, getting good airflow underneath was more important to me. So that's going to be the next upgrade we do, since it doesn't require taking the entire machine apart, especially with the upgrades that we've printed now. They will attach directly onto them with no stress. Now, the first thing we're going to do, of course, is pop off any loose parts, like your extruder nut, your drawer. Put them aside for now. Make sure, of course, you don't have any filament in it. It's unplugged. It's set to home, so your bed's in a good place. And we can adjust everything as we need to put all the upgrades on. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the bed. And really quickly, this is something I do want to talk about. You will notice I do have the stock glass bed upside down. I do get asked about this all the time. It's because of this smooth side. I get 100% adhesion 100% of the time. And that's not easy. And I don't mess with it. Now, if you do use whatever, people swear by different materials. Whatever works for you, works for you. I'm just saying this works great for me, so that's why you'll see me doing it. You don't have to copy this. But give it a try if you haven't tried it yet. Now, some of you may be asking yourselves, why did he take the bed completely off? Well, reason is twofold. One, I wanted to check the soldering on my wires here, and I wanted to see underneath the bed. Remember, this is all about tuning up this machine. I wanted to make sure my belt tension was good. There was nothing maybe hiding under here that was getting in the way. Make sure my heaters were nice and clean. Everything was the way it's supposed to be. And take a few seconds and do that, because I'm going to show you some things that you're going to find that are going to really, really surprise you. Now, just to show you what I'm talking about, this came off of one wheel. That's pretty disgusting. That came off the other wheel. And I mean, you can move this around. This is only after a couple of weeks of use. I got a lot of feedback on my wheel dust video with a lot of questions. And this is the answer. Concentric nuts and eccentric nuts. Your normal concentric nut that you tighten down in every day has a hole in the dead center. An eccentric nut has this hole off to the side. That allows whatever assembly you have attached to it to be able to be adjusted one way or the other. In our case, it's a wheel. And those wheels are found behind your hot end, on this side of your gantry, and underneath your bed. Basically, everywhere you've seen the wheel dust is where you'll find that nut. Those are the ones you need to adjust. Now, to adjust these, all you need is your Allen key that came with the machine and your wrench. You don't need any special tools. And all you're going to do is, while it's on the bed, make sure you have a holding nut. You're going to go loosen it at a half turn, tighten it at a half turn. That in itself is going to reseat that wheel properly. When I say half turn, make sure it's snug but not overly tight. That'll allow it to glide, and it just recenters it in the groove. The wheel itself wants to be in that groove. So just by taking a little bit, like this one's extremely tight, so I can tell it's, and this was the worst wheel. So it was pulling that wheel up. Now I moved that wheel down. It's free now. I'm going to snug it down. Now, one of the other benefits of this is you're going to notice a little more smoother movement out of your bed. Now, this is where you're going to take a second and make sure your belt tension's good on both sides. I know it's going to be the same, but just in case. Bring your bed back down to the middle. Make sure you have just enough on both sides, and you're good there. You've adjusted your screws, you know everything's tight, you know everything's sitting right. Now we can start putting it together, and I'm going to do that with my Wisecam mount, and we're going to go on from there. Now at this point, I want to make a note of something. Make sure you always start with this rear screw when remounting your bed. and so you can make sure your spring, everything is set on this. Put your nut on, your knob on very lightly, just a couple of turns, not even snug, just a couple of turns to hold it on there. Then go to this one. Now the cheat, if you're going to mount a camera, take one of your bolts and just drop it through one of your holes. That way you can take your spring and screw on the other side, and you'll have it seated properly, and you can slide the spring right in. There we go. Personally, I think this looks great. There's just a little bit of wiggle wobble in there that once you, of course, adjust your bed, level your bed out, that'll go away. One little trick that I like to do is when I'm resetting my bed surface, just check for level. Put a level across it. Make sure you don't feel anything. Put an angle. And just make sure there's no warpage here, because it's more common than you think. And then push down with the same finger and the same amount of pressure on all 4 corners. This is going to give you the same amount or close to the same amount of pressure on each spring. And you can pretty much know where you want to be when you look at the springs underneath. So, okay, upgrade 1, done. Okay, now for anybody wondering why I flipped it up this way, was simply because it gives me easier access to everything that we're going to need to change underneath, along with being able to cut the cable management. One thing to note is make sure your wires by your feeder are out of the way. Just double check, triple check, quadruple check. Nothing wrong with checking everything over and over and over again to make sure you are not bending, snapping anything on a wire, putting pressure where it does not need to be. This is the best way to stand your printer up, unless you have some sort of stand, and I'm sure they exist out there, but this is the best way to do it. So let's get our covers out and see what we're looking at. So let me take a second and show you how this is all going to go. This is going to take the place of the PSU cover. Now note the fan is here, and we also have the fan mounts on here, so we're good to go. It's a direct replacement. The fan will mount right here, and this will all be honeycombed and open. That's going to allow for a lot of flow, because one of the things that are missing, and you'll see this when we pop this cover off, is they forgot to cut the exhaust vents. So while this is somewhat taking in air, somewhat, and I use that term loosely, this is going to take in a lot more, and it's also going to let the air out, because taking air into a machine and not circulating it anywhere is not going to do you any good. This is going to be our new cable management system on the bottom. Now, as you can see, it's going to sit in just like this. It has some extra venting. It has all your screw mount holes, and of course, excuse me, your cable management system. Fantastic design. Can't argue one bit. So together, they're going to look something like that. So that's going to eliminate all this metal, all this heat, all this blah that you don't need. Now quickly, let me scale up while we're under here. At the same time, we're going to be doing the legs. Now these legs are just, these feet are just adhesive, and it's pretty weak. So you just pop off your end caps. They're only a couple of millimeters long. Pop them out with a screwdriver. Pull off your feet, and we're going to put some more adhesive on these I'm actually going to use a JB Weld epoxy because I never want them to come off. And we're going to place them on our new 35mm feet, which of course will raise our entire height of our machine by 35mm, which is going to give us some fantastic airflow, and we need that. Now, you don't need to watch me tear the entire thing apart. I will show you what screws are going to be going where when we put it back together. But essentially, we're removing this entire cover here, down to these screws. This is all coming off, and this is all what's going to be replaced, because over here, as you can see, just great venting. That's good, no problem. And yes, these new additions will work fine with the chain cable management system, which is awesome, and will be, like I said, my next upgrade. And really, it should be yours too. So I'm going to get this apart. I'm not even going to bother with a time lapse. Let me just tear it apart, and I'll show you when we're putting it back together. Now, while you're in the process of dismantling your machine, you're going to take these two bolts out first. These two bolts are going to come out second. There's going to be a wire tie, a cable tie right here into this hole. Just cut it out. You don't need it anymore. Peel off your legs, and we'll talk about this, but you're going to want to, you need to pull this cover off, which is this screw, hex head, and the two on the front. Just enough to slide the new foot in. Now you can see I left some residue here. That doesn't matter to me because I want a really snug fit. But while you're taking all this apart, put the rubber feet from your existing into your new foot riser. And it'll be nice and square like that, as you can see. Now put your epoxy into the bottom here on the inside. Take a very fine flathead screwdriver, a common driver, and run it around the edges as you're applying pressure down until you get a completely flat surface. And this is what it'll look like when it's done. Another thing I want to know with these feet is you'll see when they're perfectly level, you'll be able to feel it because it'll feel rigid again. But this is the other reason why you want to print in something like 3D Fuel, PRO PLA, or any kind of PLA that is engineering or industrial grade, because this does not go in here just with pressure, especially if you're putting a little epoxy in there to take up some of that air room. You're going to need to add a bit of force and getting around here with a flathead, pushing, maybe a little bending, letting that air escape. This won't crack on you, and pretty much a normal PLA will. So this is the reason why right off the bat you want to print with a quality product. Okay, now we removed these 4 screws along with this small one and cut the cable tie. Now this is where some people get messed up. I've seen people put their printers up on some weird things. All you have to do is have a stable surface, move your gantry all the way up to the top, and you could lay this flat. And what it's going to do, it's going to raise the corner where you have to take this cover off to get the new foot in. And it's going to make your life a lot easier. So now that we have all this separated, let's take a look. Let's open it up and see if there's anything else that's going to get in our way. We have screws here on this side, as well as 4 screws here. Now, I believe they're holding the PSU in place, so we're going to start with these 2, get them out, and we should be able to remove this cover without an issue. So now we've gotten these 2 button head hexes out of the way, this should come right off. And take note, solid. Well, there's your air vents. Yeah, that's a problem. That covering that up. Yeah, that's a problem. Now, you could just measure these out and cut the holes for them, or you cut a slat out. It's up to you. I want to keep my factory plate intact, and I like the honeycomb design, to be honest with you. And I don't, with printing with the 3D fuel, I don't have to worry about temperature, so I'm going to go that route. And let's see how it turns out. So, just so you can all see, there is a screw here and a screw here that we're going to remove, and that should free up the cover for us. Now, as you can see, that's freed up. The screws on the deck side, we did have to take out. So I popped those two screws out the side. Nice and easy. Cover came off. So, now, you can use power tools when taking out screws. But when you're putting them in, do it by hand. Use a regular screwdriver, just so you don't over tighten or strip anything. And that's the cover that we wanted to get off. So that's going now. That's going to go with the rest of the supplies off to the side. And we are going to take the fan. We are going to use the screws we just removed to mount the fan back in its location. Just a quick side note for reassembly. With your fan attached, your label is going to be on the inside. The wire is going to be on the bottom right as it was. And then it'll mount exactly back in its original position. Nice and snug. Beautiful. So here we have all the screws back in. Fans in place. I put in the top two screws here because we're going to need the bottom two screw holes for our new filler here. Looks pretty easy. Let's see how it turns out. It looks like the design is fantastic. I'm going to bolt it all together. We have 1, 2, 3 bolts installed. They went right in actually without any problem. And I snugged down the cable ties. I'm not really concerned about leaving some ends because with the feet we're going to be adding on, the height is going to be more than substantial to cover anything. But the cable management system built into this, I really cranked these down and it held really well. Nothing broke, nothing flexed, and you can see everything bolted right back on where it belongs perfectly. Really impressed. This was a great job. It's a great design. I really am happy with it. I was a little worried about getting these legs on with the plate, but the designer, what they did was added grooves to this leg, and what that did is allowed for some extra clearance here. Now, if you come all the way around it, you can see very clearly that this looks factory. I mean, when you're looking at that foot, that looks like a factory installation, and that I'm really impressed with. So I put the front 2 feet on. I just have to tap in the back 2 feet. As you can see, what I did here is I just took out these 2 screws in this one and flexed this plate just enough out of the way to slide the leg in, and now I just have to reattach these screws. So that was a very painless job. I'm going to attach these 2 screws, and then I'm going to leave this one out for right now because I'm going to be attaching the micro SD to the SD card holder next, and I'm going to need access to that screw. Okay, we're getting into the home stretch now, and that is the micro SD to SD card adapter, and that's going to fit right here. So what we're going to do is make sure that your prongs are facing upwards, because that's the way they slide in. You're going to take it, it slots right in. There is a packer if you want to print it. I found that the machine body did a fine job of doing it without it. You're going to feed this back through, so that way you can attach it. This has two nubs that are going to fit into the groove up here on the bed. And it's going to flex around and mount in to the screw hole here on the bottom. Very, very easy assembly. Not something I would thought would have been difficult at all. It's an incredibly useful design, and anything that makes life easier, especially like me, I have psoriatic arthritis. So my fingers are constantly deforming, and I have to be extremely careful with what I grab. Now that's all hooked up. Next thing we do is stand our printer up and plug this in and get our top upgrades going. This wheel's a little different because you're not going to use the Allen key. You need to use the wrench there, okay? And you're going to use, of course, the smaller wrench on this side. Now, on the front side, you have a little room between the extruder and the bar to get it just right. Now, I can feel already this is loose. So I'm going to snug it down. And of course, while you're back here, it doesn't hurt to just give it a once over, and they're snug, they're great. So now let's get down to the final upgrades. We're going to slot in our new support for our filament guide. Snaps in nice and firm. Let's do the tool holder on the opposite side. Oh, that's a really nice fit. And let's get our new filament wheel in. This machine's getting so wide it barely fits in the slot now. And finally, the last thing that we're going to do is snap in our filament guide wheel. So here we have it, our Creality Ender3 V2, all tuned up and ready to go back to work. And honestly, for a few 3D printed parts, I have to say it was well worth waiting to do the upgrades, to get the upgrades that I wanted to get. That bed clearance is amazing. She's ready to be all dialed in. Return to service.